Hey fight fans, John Ramdeen here inside of the beautiful Rogers Centre in downtown Toronto, the site of UFC 129, which will take place on April 30th. On Tuesday, the UFC held a press conference where we had a chance to hear from UFC President Dana White, as well as UFC welterweight champion George St-Pierre and featherweight champion Jose Aldo, as well as the title challengers Jake Shields and Mark Hominick.
Go over that for us once again.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. Finally, you know, I always say Canada's the mecca of mixed martial arts. It's unbelievable how fast it's taken off here, how big it is here, and how much talent comes out of Canada. And, you know, to finally be here, and the people, you know, we've been all over Canada putting on fights over the last several years, and the people from Ontario were screaming for this. We're finally here, and to have, you know, two guys from Canada, you know, competing for titles, it's awesome.
Sure. Melissa, we've got lots planned for the week leading up to the April 30th event. Of course, we've got a fan expo over at the Direct Energy Center, which is about 300,000 square feet over in the C&E stands. We'll have probably 40, 50, 60,000 fans that'll descend upon that, and there'll be grappling tournaments, demonstrations, Q&A with fighters and with Dana, autograph sessions. It's really an opportunity for us to showcase our sport to as many MMA fans as there are, and we know there's hundreds of thousands in this region. But leading up towards that, there's going to be all sorts of other events in the city, throughout the city. We want to make this, in many ways, this is our Super Bowl, with all due respect to our Grey Cup as well. And that's what's really going to happen this whole week. And we're going to make this a celebration of the UFC and a celebration of mixed martial arts, and it's going to be terrific.
Jake is a different guy. He's different than all the guys that I've fought recently, and I think I'm different than all the guys that Jake has fought differently. In a way that Jake has different tools, he's dangerous in a different ways, and I'm dangerous in a different ways. Guy that I've fought Jake Shield before, they only tried to keep the fight standing up. They were too worried about the ground. Jake doesn't know what I'm gonna do to him. I can go with strike, or I can go with a takedown and ground and pound and go for a submission. You know, that's the thing that makes me dangerous, and Jake is very dangerous as well for me because he's been working very hard on his Muay Thai, so he's going to try to knock me out standing up, and he's going to try to submit me on the floor. So he's the kind of guy that he doesn't have only one big weapon. He's very well-rounded, and plus he's a very clever fighter. That's what makes him the most dangerous. He's a clever guy. You have a lot of guys who are dangerous in the sport, but they're not clever. They're not, you know, they go there and they try to rumble. And he's not that kind of guy, you know. He's very clever, so that's why he's very dangerous for me. Yeah, for me, I fight with emotion, but I don't fight with anger. When you fight with the anger, you know, like people says, your last fight, Josh Koscheck, he tried to make you angry. I wasn't, you know, I could be angry, but I'm not gonna fight with anger, because when you fight like this, you commit yourself, you make mistake, you know. So I'm gonna fight with emotion, but of course, I'm going to have what you call in English the goosebump, you know, like I'm going to be nervous and everything with the emotion. I'm a proud guy. I want to win. But I'm not going to go out there and, you know, it's a skills, you know, it's a fight.
I think this fight will mostly be based off skill, but I mean, there's going to be some emotion as well. You know, when you got 40, 50,000 fans screaming and yelling, it's impossible to hold the emotion out. But yeah, I think we're definitely fighters that try to use our heads and skill.
Well, Jake has definitely, you know, like we said, he's been on this run, and he's fought at 185 pounds too, and been dominant there. But the thing is, the reason this Anderson Silva-George St-Pierre fight makes so much sense is because these two have consistently been fighting in the UFC, and this is more of a legacy super fight. You know, people argue over who's the pound-for-pound best in the world. Is it GSP? Is it Anderson Silva? And both guys will, if he beats Jake Shields, he just beat Vitor. They've cleaned out an entire division over the last several years, and the fight makes sense. It's like the pound for pound championship.
Dana, when you were making up this fight card, how important was it to have George on it? And in your opinion, what makes him such a fan favorite?
Well, I don't know if you remember leading up to this fight, I was saying we don't need to go into Toronto with George St-Pierre headlining. I mean, obviously, if you have George St-Pierre headlining, it doesn't suck, but you know, it worked out that way, and here he is. Listen, if you look at the UFC, and one of the great things about the UFC is how many stars we do have, how many guys headline pay-per-views. I mean, we went up into Montreal with 2 Brazilians headlining the card. You know, we've been in LA with Brazilians headlining the card. Wherever we go, we've gone to England with BJ Penn headlining a card before, and you know, people love everybody in the UFC, and a lot of times you get where these people from different countries want to see the guys that they haven't seen fight yet. But George St-Pierre, if you look at our top 3 superstars, I would call George St-Pierre number 1. I think he's, I literally think, and you know, all that stuff that started with Gretzky and him being the largest, I'm telling you right now, I'm going to say it again up here to you guys, and eventually it'll sink in. This guy is a monster, superstar, not just here, all over the world. So if I was headlining with George St-Pierre in Toronto, Las Vegas, Egypt, Poland, it doesn't matter. This guy is a huge superstar all over the world.
Yeah, for me, I'm training all the time. I consider myself a martial artist because I'm not training because I have a fight coming up. I'm training because it's my lifestyle. And after cost check, I took maybe a Sunday off. Then I was training a little bit. You know, I'm not gonna say I was training just as hard as I'm training when I get ready for a fight, but with the same intensity. But I always train. You know, try to get better. My mentality is, when I go in bed at night, I know I'm a better martial artist than when I wake up in the morning. And that's what I do every day.
It will be the largest mixed martial arts event, as Dana said, in North America ever. We set the earlier record in Montreal to UFC 124. We had over 23,000 fans show up. We'll hopefully be close to double that. So it will be the largest event, but as we've said before, it's just going to be a great experience for our fans, regardless of where they're coming from.
When the event was first announced, obviously you wanted to make it big. Did you have it in the back of your mind that if we could have 2 Canadians fighting for titles, that would just be great?
Well, I never really thought that that necessarily would happen. I lobbied Dana and Lorenzo and Joe Silva to have 2 championships because I think that this is the kind of venue, this is the kind of city, and this is the kind of country that can host that. The last time we had 2 championships fights were on April the 10th last year in Dubai, and of course we had 2 for UFC 100 in Las Vegas. So I always hoped that there was going to be two championships. I can't tell you how thrilled I am to have Mark be sitting beside me and also have a chance to fight for the first time for his championship belt against a great fighter, Jose Aldo. I think it's going to be great for Canadian fight fans, but also just great for UFC fans. They're going to be amazing fights, and the rest of the card's going to be terrific as well, and we'll be announcing that later.
And just for Mark, obviously before your last fight, you knew that if you were to win, you were going to get this shot, and you look so good. Did that knowledge make you come out with such oomph?
Well, I went into the last training camp, like 8 weeks out. I went in. I was like, I want to make a statement. I want to prove why I'm the #1 contender, because I knew I was offered the fight January 1st, and I was close to a title shot. But I wanted to go out there and reintroduce myself to the UFC fans, prove why I'm the #1 contender, and do it in an impressive fashion. And that's, believe, what I did.
Isso faz parte. Eu acho que não tem problema algum se ele falou isso ou não. Para mim, não muda. Eu acho que eu faço meu treinamento no Brasil, isso que é importante. Eu venho focado na luta. Não me importa o que o adversário fala, se eu já lutei com alguém melhor ou pior. Para mim, todos que eu já enfrentei na minha carreira sempre foram bons e ótimos lutadores.
You know, that's all part of the game, whatever he's going to say before the fight. It all comes down to the training I do in Brazil. I think all my opponents have been very tough, and he's going to be no different.
Mark, for yourself, I mean, talking back to our days in Montreal and in the Verdun Arena and then Gatineau, and finally you're now going to be fighting on Ontario soil, but it's going to be 42,000 people. You're in the co-main event, fighting a guy who's arguably top 3 pound for pound in the sport. How do you plan on dealing with all of this pressure?
You know what? This is the dream I've been thinking about since I've been 13 years old. You know, like, this is my passion, this sport. Since I've been 13 years old, every morning I've woken up thinking about training, about the sport, about getting better, and every night I went to bed thinking the same thoughts. You know, this is the culmination of 10 years as a pro, and I'm ready to do it on April 30th.
Julia Burke News. First, a question for Mark. Mark, how exciting is it for you to perform here, knowing that London and Thamesville are just down the road?
Tempsford.
Tempsford, sorry.
No, it's
not too far from
like
here.
I said, this is a dream come true. But I'm starting to realize I have a lot of third cousins, a lot of old friends who I went to kindergarten with, who I haven't talked to since kindergarten, wanted front row tickets. So, but no, this is a great opportunity, and to be able to be showcased in the co-main event, like I said, this is a dream come true, and I'm ready to do it.
Carolina Ladeira, from Brasil News. José, Aldo, cada vez o UFC está ficando mais famoso no Brasil exatamente porque nós temos tanta representatividade. Vocês estão conseguindo um destaque imenso. E eu queria saber como você lida com essa responsabilidade de estar representando, de estar defendendo o Brasil e pensando também no Rio de Janeiro, com a sua expectativa. Você espera lutar lá, ainda mais que é...
The question was, with the MMA growing so much all over the world, how's the responsibility of carrying Brazil as a flag and being the event in Brazil this year?
Para mim, importante é a minha cabeça. Eu sempre mantenho minha cabeça no lugar. Para mim, eu nunca conquistei nada, né? Estou correndo atrás ainda. Então, e é importante. Eu acho que não só eu, como o Anderson, como o Vitor também, qualquer todos os brasileiros que somos campeões, fazer mudar um pouco a mente do Brasil, né? Por aquilo que eles tinham de antigamente, que hoje em dia virou um esporte, que é o MMA.
I think it's all a matter of keeping yourself grounded and being able to keep your mind in a good place. You know, myself and Anderson Silva and Nogueira and all the guys fighting from Brazil, we've done a lot to show that the sport has grown a lot, and the MMA is really a legitimate sport, and I think we've done a good job at that in Brazil.
Question for Dana, and then a question for George. To your right, Dana.
Oh.
Any thoughts on putting together a primetime three-part series for this fight here to really show people that, you know, a side that maybe they haven't seen about Jake Shields, and to continue to show George St-Pierre to drive more traffic to the pay-per-view?
Let me work on that, Joe. You know, we hadn't talked about it, but that's not a bad idea. If I do it, it's because of you. Good idea.
I appreciate that. George, how important, and we talk about this all the time, finishing a fight or finishing. I mean, there's still the people out there that are criticizing you for not finishing a fight. We saw you nearly snap Dan Hardy's limbs off, and then we nearly, you busted up Josh Koscheck's face. But going into this fight, how important is it to finish Jake Shields, to silence the remaining critics?
It's not to finish Jake Shields. People have to understand, the guy that stepped into the octagon when he's going to fight for a world title, you have to understand, you have to put yourself into the guy's shoes. He's going there. When I'm going to fight, sometimes I'm going to fight I put myself in a mindset that I might not come back. You know, that's how it is. You know, it's not reality, but that's how these guys get there when they fight me, and I know it. You know, Dan Hardy, I tried to snap the arms. You know, I made a mistake. You know, a technical mistake. If I would have done it right, it would have snapped, but he didn't. And Koscheck, you know, his eye, I broke an orbital bone, you know, in two different places. You know, this fight could have been stopped. Koscheck never stopped. You know, he's a true warrior. You know, warrior spirit. A lot of guys would have stopped. You know, but he didn't. You know, because like I said, he went there in the mindset that he was ready to maybe not come back. You know, that's how much they want the title. So every time I step into the octagon, I'm ready for that challenge. And of course, it would be good for me if I can finish it like a clean knockout or a submission. And that's what I'm planning to do, but sometimes it doesn't always happen like the way I want.
Finally, I heard somewhere women represent 40% of the folks who are coming out, the demographic watching. What do you know about that? What's driving the popularity there?
That actually surprised me more than how big it became in Canada. You know, when we bought this company, it was a no-brainer. Males 18 to 34, and we never saw the female side of this thing. It's so big with women too. In Vegas, you know, Fox did this study on it once. Girls taking girls trips to Vegas for UFC fights. So yeah, we have a lot of female fans.
Ian Cooksell, CBC News. Dana, just a couple questions. You keep mentioning what a mecca Canada is for UFC. What is it about Canadians that produces that kind of talent and is attracted to the sport? Are we just bloodthirsty?
No, it's, you know, I think that anybody who is a fan of mixed martial arts, they're not bloodthirsty. They're a fan of this, you know, this art that these guys are so incredibly talented. And really, when you look at all other sports, whether it's football, baseball, basketball, hockey, soccer, they're all huge fans of the UFC, all these other athletes. I mean, I think that fighting is a sport that all other sports aspire to be. And it's always well known that you know, as human beings. The reason that the UFC works, not just up here in the Mecca in Canada, but all over the world as we continue to roll this thing out, is because we're human beings and fighting's in our DNA. We get it and we like it. Canada just gets it and likes it a lot more than everybody else.
There is so much skill, but there is a lot of violence, controlled, I know you said. How do you keep your competitors safe? There's so much talk even today about hockey and concussions. This is
football.
Sure, this is a much more dangerous sport, some would say. So what do you do to keep your players safe?
Some that would say that are very uneducated about the sport. The reality is, in the almost 20-year history of the Ultimate Fighting Championship, there's never been a death or serious injury. Now, every time, we're regulated by the government, okay? What happens is, every time one of these events are going to happen, these guys go in and they get medically tested for, you know, they get CAT scans, EKGs, get full checkups so that we know that 2 healthy athletes are going in there to compete. Then you have the refs that are there to stop the fight when the fight needs to be stopped, and then they get medically tested after. This sport's very safe. I don't think the fans are going to be too surprised by it, but I think the city of Toronto will. How many people, and it's not just going to be people from Canada that are up here. People are going to come from all over the country and all the other parts of the world. And it's going to be an incredible weekend here that weekend. There's going to be so many people here, great energy, and it's going to be very cool. I'm really pumped for it.
Well, according to UFC President Dana White, the fans will get their money's worth in what will undoubtedly be the biggest event in North American mixed martial arts history. Inside of the Rogers Center, John Ramdeen, The Fight Network.